let's get the meeting started with Denis Grey and the sky this month.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Paul, for the introduction. As Paul probably mentioned, I'm sorry I can't be with you live tonight, but I'm going to review the sky this month with you in any case, and my good friend Chris Vaughn is going to answer any questions that might come up, because I know he's on top of this with his weekly Skylights series that he's doing, and he's also been a regular contributor here. So thanks in advance, Chris, for addressing any questions that we might have. So let's go. Let's go and have a little look at where we are. As usual, I'm going to start with the big picture just to try and put everybody in context. Talk about some of the highlights that we see coming up this month. It's a bit of a dry month, but we're going to make as much fun of it as we can. Talk about planets, the moons, as well as comets and other targets in this season of galaxies. So first of all, I think it's worthy to take a look again at the big picture. This graph that I get from moonwise.co.uk shows an all-sky map, and it's really nice because it's sort of oversized, shows you the planets and the moon in a bit of an oversized way, and it shows constellation figures that make sense here. So we can see where we are kind of in this moment in time. This is where the moon will be mid-month when it's full, and we can see here that in the evening sky we have pretty well no planets anymore. We've got Uranus heading diving towards the sun. Not, as everyone knows, not a terribly impressive telescopic sight. Certainly not something you can spot naked eye that near the horizon. But all of the planets are still there. They're just all piled up in the morning sky, and we'll be talking a little bit about that and how there's some nice conjunction action going on there later in the month. But for the moment, if you're looking for anything to see in planetary terms in the evening sky, there's just nothing there. One thing that you may notice is the winter hexagon, which is a big asterism, which is normally visible during the winter season, kind of connecting Capella in as well as the twins in Gemini, going through Procyon, Sirius anchors at the bottom, and then it touches Orion, as well as Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. So that pattern is pretty large. It's one of the largest asterisms that we know, but it sort of anchors the winter sky, and it's kind of similar to the summer triangle, which you can see up here. Deneb, Vega, and Altair starting to make its appearance and become known in this part of the season. One of the things about this season is that the summer action, all of the objects and so on, are showing up in the morning. So if you're able to stay up late this time of year, you can see the best of the winter Milky Way as well as the best of the summer Milky Way, as long as you're willing to stay up late enough. In terms of where we are with the overall period of darkness that we have, right now we are running at about 9 hours and 34 minutes of dark, full dark, at each night. And we are in that transition phase as we head toward the equinox this month, where the rate of change is accelerating, and we're losing about 4 minutes a day now of darkness as we go towards the equinox. And in fact, by this time next month, we'll have lost an entire hour and 40 minutes or so of dark by the time that we reach April. And you do notice this, obviously in your day-to-day life, but as also as astronomers, this is kind of important to note that a clear sky in April will give you a lot more night than a clearer sky in May, because this effect accelerates through here and then as we get near the summer solstice, the nights stay short for a while around the June solstice. So keep that in mind. Also, something to keep in mind: this discontinuity represents the return of daylight savings time. Boo! Yes. But daylight savings time does have an effect on everybody, of course, and it will basically bump everything back an hour and result in more twilight time, later sunsets, and a little bit of less time in the morning, which is generally good, I think, for most of us. But I wish they wouldn't do it. I'm increasingly aware of how it affects me the following day, couple of days after the time change. And I think I'd rather we just stuck with daylight savings time all year round. It would make life easier. So one other thing I just like to point out here a bit is just in terms of what where we are in terms of what we are looking at. So as the Earth goes around the sun and the night sky of the Earth, you can think of it as a big circle. And as the Earth goes around the sun, our night hemisphere points towards different things out there in the galaxy. And what's happening now as we go through this annual pattern, we're moving away from the winter Milky Way, represented by things like Orion, and that whole light Milky Way that we see there. We're moving towards the spring. And as we move towards the spring, we're looking outside of our galaxy. We're looking straight up, if you will, away from towards the north. And as a result, there's not much in the way of galactic things to see this month. And that's the impact of that as we go out of the winter time and through to the spring. In terms of what we can see, I mentioned the winter hexagon earlier. We've got the really pretty star cluster of the Pleiades and the Hyades are still visible around sunset, along with Orion, Orion's belt. All of this stuff is visible now towards pretty well right after dark. You can get out there and see those. Not much more time left before those things will disappear. Gemini is at its height here. And one of the things I always like to think about when I'm looking at Gemini and Cancer is this is actually on the ecliptic, and this is exactly where the sun is going to be at its most high come June. So we're a quarter of the year away, and basically in 3 months' time, the sun will move from the horizon to Cancer or so. And when it's at that point, that's when we're going to have our longest day. So if you look up and see where Cancer or better or easier to see is Gemini, that'll remind you of where the sun's going to be when it gets warm. Trailing behind Cancer, we have Leo, and that is where the galaxies are very clustered, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about planets. So I mentioned, that all of the planets are kind of clustered really close to the morning sky right now. Mercury is pretty well invisible. I may have been able to spot it if you were really up early this morning, but basically it's going to be gone for the rest of the month. Venus and Mars are both in the morning sky. They're reported to be all right tonight. And they are essentially there if you're able to get up early and get a good clear horizon. Jupiter is pretty well behind the sun now. It's going to be reaching sort of a superior conjunction in the next couple of days. It'll come back in April, so there's not much to see there. But Saturn is in the process of finishing its round about the sun, and it's going to be coming back into view mid-month or so and getting involved in the excitement of the conjunctions that we're expecting to see late in March. Some notable get-togethers that we will see in the sky, in the morning sky. Venus and Mars, I told you they were all right tonight. They're going to be within about 4 degrees of each other on March 15th, so that's close to Wednesday. That's our next meeting. So it's something to look for as you're heading up, getting up in the morning. And it should be, this is the best day, is the 15th, but you should be able to see them fairly close together for a day before or after. Then sort of the highlight of this month, March 27th through the 29th, we've got Venus, Saturn, Mars, and the Moon all together in Capricornus, all together near dawn. And they're going to be doing a little bit of shifting of positions around and adjusting their positions there. But this is a nice opportunity for a wide-angle photo that will show sort of most of the planets in the solar system all together, hanging out together, and potentially a really excellent photo opportunity. The evening sky this month, not as much to talk about. We've got March 8th, we've got the crescent moon nearing Pleiades and Hyades. On March 15th, there's an occultation expected of Eta Leonis, which is a magnitude 3.5 star, pretty bright, which will be occulted by the dark edge of the moon as it goes through. that should be visible in binoculars, and you should be able to watch the star get closer and closer to the moon's edge and then suddenly go poof, disappear. So that's something else to look for at our next meeting. And I'll hope that maybe Chris or someone can bring our attention to that in terms of the timing, and maybe we'll adjourn for 10 minutes so people can go out and see it. Talk about, great. The moon this month is going through its normal phases. Right now, we are just moments ago, we had our new moon, so the moon is out of the way for the moment. And this weekend coming, weather permitting, would be a good weekend for deep sky observing. First quarter is coming up on March 10th. We have our full moon in the middle of the month on the 18th. This is sometimes known as the worm moon. I don't get too hung up on those moon names because it seems every area and cultural group and region has their own set of these names for these moons. So it's useful to sort of put it in context of the spring. And I'm sure the Maori people in New Zealand would not be thinking spring thoughts here; they'd be thinking fall thoughts. So each moon has its own name. And the equinox is coming up, 11:33 a.m. Brace yourself on March 20th because it's going to come boom, and then we'll be moving forward into the longer days than night. There's a couple of comets that you could have a gander at or have a search for this month. We have comet Borley, which is a periodic comet, number 19. Currently in the constellation Aries, about magnitude 9.5. So you can pull that in with probably a 5-inch telescope or a 3-inch telescope, maybe with a little bit of camera help, depending on your sky conditions and so forth. And then there's a non-periodic comet, Atlas, 2019 L3. This is a current light curve of it. So you can see here that this comet started at magnitude 18, worked its way up quite nicely over the past year, and seems to have kind of reached its peak just a little bit below 8th magnitude, and is now kind of fading a bit, but still at a respectable 9.5 magnitude, and in Gemini, which means it's directly overhead, which makes that comet potentially more reachable or easy to spot than other comets would be. So again, worth an opportunity. As I reported last March when I did the sky this month, there is still no notable meteor activity expected in March. Sorry, but the Lyrids are coming up in late April, and whoever takes the sky this month, next month, will be able to tell you all about meteors then. Zodiacal Light is in season here in March. So each year, as the ecliptic sort of moves up and down, it lines up so that it's at a good angle at sunset. So again, if we kind of go back here, I'm just going to skip back, and you can kind of see here, maybe not the best view, but see how the ecliptic is kind of going at a 90-degree angle to the horizon. And that's the condition that we need in order to see the zodiacal light. So the zodiacal light is the faint dust left by millions of comets over the years, and it's floating around in the plane of the solar system. And when the plane of the solar system kind of comes straight up, we get our best view of that. It's high enough up and away enough from the horizon that you can distinctly see this sort of V-shaped glow on the horizon, provided you have a very dark sight. So you need kind of clear skies, dark sight, and a bit of patience, and you can see that V-shaped glow and know that you're looking at the accumulated dust of billions of years of solar system history all floating around in the plane of our whole solar system. It's the kind of thing that often will show up really well on a photograph, like this one here, where you can take an exposure of a few a minute or so and pull it out of the sky. But again, you need a dark sky, so it's one of those get out of town kind of phenomena if you want to see it. The Minima of Algol. So the Algol is this cool variable star that you're able to spot very easily. It goes from very bright to pretty bright and back on a regular schedule. The trick this month, of course, is that Perseus, the constellation that Algol is in, is starting to set, so we don't have that much time to observe this behavior. The best opportunity, I think, is the minimum on March 9th, where it hits its minimum right around 7 o'clock. So you would be able then to watch it brighten and keep an eye on it as you are going about your observing on March 9th. That's coming up a week today. I wanted to just highlight that there's a couple of really nice open clusters that are in their best position right now. M44 in Cancer, again, that's classic. That's an old open cluster. You can compare and contrast that with a young open cluster like the Pleiades. So it's a little fainter, a little further away, but also older. So it's a cluster that's starting to show its age a bit. And M67 is another cluster that's in the same general field of view, even further away and fainter. So they're grouped together. And then M48 and Hydra, nice loose open group. It's a bit of a challenge object because you've got to get a good southern horizon for it. And it's one of those things that if you're doing the Messier Marathon, you need to make sure that you plan for that one in order to get it. Speaking of which, the Messier Marathon is open and season is open now. So we have our new moon weekend right now coming up. And that's an important part of doing your Messier Marathon. Now, for those of you that haven't heard of the Messier Marathon before, we're going to be talking more about the Messier objects in our next talk. But this is kind of what's going on with the Messier Marathon. So if you plot all of the Messier objects in the sky as represented by these little yellow icons here and so forth, you can see that they're scattered, some of the galaxies and so forth, like the galaxy clusters that we have here in Virgo and so on, are sort of in the middle of the sky. And then we have a lot of objects that follow the Milky Way as it goes about. So we have our winter Milky Way over here. You can see that's Orion. We have our summer Milky Way over here. There's Cygnus the Swan and so on. But at this particular moment in March, if you can see where the sunset horizon and the sunrise horizon is, it's possible to see all of the Messier objects, or almost all of the Messier objects in a single night, depending on where you are in location. So you can see here, we have a difficult one, M30, which is a globular cluster, and it's just at the edge of the sunrise horizon. So you need to make sure that you catch that one, and that can be the difference between getting all of your Messier objects and not all of your Messier objects. Another classic difficult one here is M79. And where the horizon is depends on your latitude. So we as Canadians in our northern latitudes have more challenging horizons than people say in the southern United States, where their horizon will give them a little bit more leeway with this challenge in terms of catching all of these objects. But it's a worthy endeavor. It's something you should give a try once in a while. And hopefully, if we are able to get back in person again, it's the kind of activity that maybe next year as a club we could get out again and have a night, try and get all the Messier objects in one swell swoop. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of other things to see, the spring galaxies are up. This is, as I mentioned, we're looking straight out of the solar system. We don't have a lot of things in the way, which means we can see deep into deep space, and we can see all of the galaxies that are available to us. One easy place to look is in the Virgo cluster. So Denobla here is at the tail end of Leo the Lion, and just off of that and between Denobla and Vindemiatrix is the Virgo cluster. And basically, if you look up there on a good dark night, you should be able to spot some of these galaxies even with binoculars. The other great place to look for galaxies is actually in Leo itself. Just below Leo the Lion here, we have a lot of galaxies as well. So again, you can spot these five are pretty easy to spot, and you would see them in binoculars as kind of smudges, but nevertheless, you're looking at a whole star city and a universe of its own, often several million light years away, and just extraordinary that you can see that light coming from that far away. Just stressing that you need dark skies, good clarity, all the best conditions to see galaxies and to enjoy a galaxy hunting expedition. In terms of bright asteroids, there's a few of them floating around, so I thought rather than focusing on one, I just sort of highlight a bunch of them. And there's a great site that I found, astrovenbutenin.net, NL in the Netherlands, and he basically maintains this active list of bright asteroids that are easy enough to spot, and he also provides a convenient star map so that you can plan your observing session here. So some of the brightest asteroids that I've highlighted here, Ceres around 8.2 magnitude, Iris and Messier around 9th, and Letitia here also around 9.9 magnitude. So all of those are spottable, and if you're planning to do any observing around these areas here, you might want to pick up an asteroid while you're at it. So that's available as well. In terms of the ISS this month, as usual, we've kind of got two seasons with the ISS. So as the ISS progresses through its orbit, we sometimes get morning passes when it appears in the morning and catches the morning sunlight and reflects it down to us, and evening passes where it catches the evening sunshine and reflects it down to us. As we get into towards the June equinox, we can actually have some evenings where we can see up to 5 passes in one night, because the ISS never actually completely gets out of the sunshine, so you can actually have a pass in the middle of the night. So that's something that we can look forward to in June. The morning passes are running from now till March 12th. Starting on the 16th, the ISS will move into the evening. I picked a good example here of one from the 16th itself. And I didn't record the date and time, whoopsie. But trust me, there is a really good pass that's happening around the middle of March. I believe it's around the 16th. And this particular one here gets up to magnitude 3.6. See, why did I remember that and not the date? But it also passes really close to the bright star Auriga, and also goes through the Hyades. So that's potentially a really cool pass, as well as good potential photo opportunity there. Speaking of the ISS, I'll just encourage folks again to have a look for ISS transit opportunities. So an ISS transit is a really cool thing, because if you pick the right date and time and you just go to the right place, you can just put your binoculars or telescope on the moon and you will see the ISS go boom, right in front of the moon. And the predictions are excellent now, so you're able to see that. So this is an example of one coming up on March 12th in the morning. The center line, which is where you would need to be to see it go boom in front of the moon, is outside of town, up northeast towards Whitby. It's going over Whitby, Stouffville, heading up through Aurora area, Stayner, right over the CAO, in fact. So if anybody happened to be at the CAO this weekend coming up, you'd be able to spot this while you were there. Bit of a early in the morning, but still a cool thing to see. And depending on the where the ISS is in orbit, you can sometimes see it approaching the moon as it's coming up, if it's lit, or otherwise you just see it as a dark silhouette on the moon. But that's a cool option that you have there in terms of setting that up. So with that, I'll just conclude and saying that I hope that we all get to show up again in front of the Science Center and get participate in some of these activities that I know we've missed so much over this past couple of years. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in person at an upcoming meeting again soon. So I hope that we're able to do that. And with that, I will conclude, and I'll hand it back to Paul and Chris. Thank you again, to see if we have any questions. Thank you again. Bye now.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. Now, if there are any questions, Chris Bond is going to take care of the answers. Let's go to Emma. Do we have any questions?
Hi, yeah, so we actually didn't get any questions tonight.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Thank you, Emma, and thanks again to Denis Grey.